the private sector country. So the entrepreneurship sector and the youth is something that we're looking at very, very closely.
No, totally agreed. I think on my side, I think if you look at the example of a lot of countries, I mean, for us, I could count about 7 different programs that are entrepreneurship driven, whether it's the Young Farmers program, whether it's actually the Kickstart program, the Citizen Entrepreneurship Development Program. So all of these are government funded programs to try and get the entrepreneurship thing going as well. And the aim is just to, create as many quality entrepreneurs as possible so that we can have a fighting chance in terms of sustainability, especially of creation of jobs and holding the jobs, because the business would actually be sustainable. So I think I totally agree with that comment.
Yes, I think we all, a lot of young people, we have so many creative and also have ideas that they want to really implement, but there might be lacking some business skills or things that they can put on the ground. And I know there are some, practical support that is going on in the ground, especially in Ethiopia. Like CDC gives trainings to some, entrepreneurs that are coming. But I'm not sure from the university and the higher institution or high school side if there are programs that actually are in place in terms of encouraging entrepreneurs to excel their ideas. Yohannes, do you have something on that? On
which part? On the, I've already answered it for her on the entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think what was said is more than enough.
Okay, great. Okay, so do you have any question? I think I'm giving the floor to the audience. Florence has a question, I think.
Would it be okay if we get out of the PowerPoint mode?
Sure.
Yeah. Running very low on battery on my side as well. Yeah. So let's hope it'll hold. So if I get cut off, apologies.
That's good. Florence, you want to ask your question?
Yes. So for that question goes for all of you. But what would you say is the role of government at the federal, national versus local levels? I mean,
by local,
you touched on
one
of those, but I want to elaborate.
I'll let Kenneth go if he wants to answer before his battery runs out.
Yes, of course. I think for me, and I like to look at job creation, in the following way: it's infrastructure development, it's creating the right environment for FDI to come in, it's entrepreneurship, and then it's innovation. And actually, in terms of how difficult it is, it's basically a graduating scale. I think that's why for me, and I think you'd see it in any economy, if you want to kickstart the economy, you normally would pour quite a lot of money in the infrastructure side. So government's role is the first two. Government basically creates the infrastructure, okay? They've got the deep pockets to do the bridges and so on and so on. But of course, also as well, you could bring in the public-private partnerships, which is something that I think is yet to be tested quite a bit in Africa. The second one would obviously be about, the policies, the regulations, the legislation that creates a fertile environment for investors from outside to want to come in. So for me, that's where I put government squarely. And then once you go now to entrepreneurship and innovation, honestly, those are for the private sector. So that way for me mentally, when I do a mind map of what job creation could look like and where would it come from, I find this framework to actually be quite useful. So it doesn't matter at national or even at local government level. It has to really be in the areas that government should be playing in. Now in Africa is interesting because government wants to get into business for some reason, and they'll stay in business for a very long time. It's okay if maybe it's a process of actually taking the venture up to a particular point. But I think if you've been within a free market economy, you know very well that competition will always actually come in to basically drive the agenda going forward. So I think government has got a role, yes, but it's not necessarily in the last two, meaning entrepreneurship and innovation. On the innovation side, maybe on the academic side, where you basically bring government-funded institutions as part and parcel of this innovation drive. And again, if you look at Africa, what is the problem with us? We don't seem to understand where the bulk of the jobs actually are created. So we should really be obsessed with quality programs that develop entrepreneurs, obviously working with government in tandem. So government can do its bit, but honestly, at some point, the private sector has to take over. And if you look at, there's a graph that I once saw, which basically showed why Africa cannot create jobs, or not as quickly as we can. Is because if you look at policies, for example, that help with even creation of an enterprise within a lot of African countries, not very strong. If you look at issues of sustainability, not very strong. If you look at issues of access to even, let's say, the government market, maybe not very supported. So I think at the end of the day, there really is a need for the meeting of minds around driving entrepreneurship, I believe. That government plays a major role, in my view, in terms of infrastructure development, as well as in terms of creating that environment, because that also brings in jobs.
I think Kenneth has said everything. I don't even know what to add anymore. If anything, the question that I had to add was that what's the difference between the federal and the local? The only thing I would add, Kenneth has given a great overview of what the government should and shouldn't be, and what the is that there shouldn't be any difference. There shouldn't be any difference between the federal government and the local. By local, I assume you mean the cities, towns, and everything. I'm not quite sure who answered. If there's a mismatch, then you have a direction, a country that goes in the wrong direction, because usually if you simplify it, the federal government comes up with more policies and regulation, and I usually see the cities and the locals with the execution. And in Africa, a lot of times we don't have issues with policies and regulations, because we're backed by all policies, and everything are written by Harvard educated citizens, World Bank, IFC, name it. Africa gets some of the smartest people. Where we usually fail is on the execution. How do you translate a great policy? How do you bring it down? How do you bring it down to the point where the people at the bottom see the benefit, and the people at the bottom are the local people? And that usually it happens is that you might have highly educated, smart Ivy League graduates at the top, but at the middle level is that you might not have equally equipped people. If you see the Western world, for example, their greatest strength is not the CEO at the bottom, it's the middle management, where they can take an order and be able to translate it. So there shouldn't be any difference. To answer your question, there shouldn't be any difference. It should be one, it should be aligned, and those that are aligned are those that usually do very well.
Yeah, totally agreed.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there are comments. I don't see questions that are coming. Oh, okay. There have always been a lot of conventions and rules on human rights, international arbitration, etc. from the United Nations and the African Union. Now, given the present reality created by COVID-19, which has led to unemployment and drop in government revenue, what is the African Union doing to shore up the revenue of countries within the African region? And what plans do they in place to train Africans in skills that can make them access to global opportunities, such as global opportunities that will require them to work remotely? I guess the question is, from like what I understood about the question is, what are African governments doing during this COVID-19 to prepare the young people into actually working remotely? Probably if you can talk about the digital skills that are lacking. And if I may add, maybe if you can answer, I think these questions go to both Kenneth and Yohannes, that we see a lot of young people, graduates from coming out of university every year in Ethiopia from public and private universities. And we also work with employers. And what we're facing is there are even jobs that we're unable to fill because they don't have the basic skills. The basic skills meaning, for example, like workplace etiquette skills or soft skills or transferable skills that we can actually put them not only in their sector or major, but also other jobs that can help them find jobs. And not everybody is cut for entrepreneurship. So we should be able to prepare them for the job that they can do anywhere. And so what would you suggest an employer can do? And the youth that are already in the marketplace, what can they do? What should be the priority, the 1, 2, 3 priorities they should be able to do to actually meet the job market right now?
Well, I think we lose Kenneth, or am I not seeing him? Well, I'll take that question, and
Okay, great.
SEEMA can add, because I kind of feel like she has something to say on that from her presentation.
Yes.
Listen, none of us know what we're supposed to do in this market. We're trying to figure it out, and half the time we think we know, but half the time we don't know. And then the third of the time we're trying to learn from our mistakes. The issue is last year we have over 100,000, 150,000 people who graduated, and you have, guess what? It's already, what are we, August, and then another 5-6 months, another 150, 200,000 will graduate from one country. The previous year haven't found a job, and you got to figure out how to get a job on this one. And this is just a simple arithmetic. And then you have to, the job market is going to become extremely, extremely, extremely competitive, as I've never seen it before, ever. Globally, as you can see, unemployment is at a high mark. I've been 15 years on Wall Street. In 2008, I lived, eat, breathe the financial meltdown. But I've never seen anything like this. This is brutal. This is brutal, and I feel sorry for the younger generation. They have to prepare in terms of basics, communication, looks, how to carry yourself. Because think of it, when an employer, when they go into an employment, they're not only looking at book smart, a straight A student. What's the use? You have a straight A student who understands everything, but does not know how to articulately communicate what his thoughts are. No one expects you to know the answer, but I expect you to have an opinion and be able to defend it. Whether you're right or wrong, I will be the judgment. And you do that by practice, number one. Number two, you need to be able to know how to deal with people that are above you. Not to be intimidated, but know how to respect. Now, the employers have a responsibility also to be able to train this. And this is known as mentorship. The Western world is very big on mentorship. Now in Ethiopia, we're trying to go into that direction. I have a nonprofit that I compliment the president's, what she's working on. I call it Zero to CEO. Basically, what we're doing is we divide high school, elementary school, high school students, university students, graduates, middle, CEOs, ministers, and parla women. So we're trying to teach them, how do you lead? Because what you see is, if you train one minister or one CEO how to be a global leader, they can have an impact on 1 million people. Okay, so it's not just the young people who need the training; it's also at the higher end. And then when it came, one of the questions is on African Union, on human rights. I know African Union is headquartered. Good to have you back, Kenneth. African Union is headquartered in Ethiopia. We have the third largest embassy in the world after Washington and Brussels. But I'm not much of a human rights expert, nor do I know anything. I have my personal opinion, but I don't know anything. African Union, I think they have the same problem. I don't work with them. I know some of the people that are there, but they have the same problem that we're working on, the Zero to CEO project that I came up with. For the elementary, we have orphanage, where we're going to train kids, orphanage kids, 0 to 8th grade, and they're being funded by Honeywell, the US conglomerate. And what Honeywell is hoping to do is that they're going to take these kids throughout their life. No one has ever done anything like this. And we're going to teach 500 students as a test pilot in this city on computer programming, STEM, and then we're going to expand it. We presented this to African Union. They're trying to figure out, we're going to try to figure out, we're going to discuss with them how to take it to the rest of Africa.
Yeah, I think, well, I obviously missed some of your deliberation there, Yohannes, but I think with the African Union, honestly speaking, I think they need a lot more advice than anything else in terms of what to really do, in this time. And honestly, I think sometimes we could actually be a lot more simpler in terms of the solutions that we believe can work with us. And for me, I like to look at it this way, to say, in this moment in time, I think that's why I chose the digital transformation issue, because we've got a lot of young people who've graduated. We also have a lot of young people who really understand this new technology. So one would ask the question, why on earth are African governments not seeing this as an opportunity? It's a golden opportunity. there's such a gap in terms of those skills, and the issues of access even to this technology, which will enable access to information, is obviously a big issue in terms of, if you're looking at haves and have-nots. So I think a very practical thing needs to happen in the wake of this crisis, to basically say, and I like the Honeywell example that you're giving. So we possibly need more of those sorts of programs that our government should basically be, supporting if they can, funds permitting, or asking for assistance so that we can actually train our young people for the future. Because we're not going to start basically, be functional if we don't actually prepare in this way. And I think at this moment in time, we have a golden opportunity. These young people are willing to learn this new technology. They know this new technology. They use the social media. They possibly will just delight us with ideas in terms of what it can actually do for our economies going forward. So I think for me, I strongly suggest that, the school system in particular, the curriculum, should all the way. For me, I think you're saying tertiary earlier on. I think you should go even further down. Basically, I'm looking preschool all the way up. Let's just make sure that we're able to have a handle of what this new world would look like. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind again,
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I think the other question I had was SEEMA, like in terms of encouraging employers. What are some of the programs that you have on the ground? Because employer is a key player in this ecosystem, obviously, in not only creating jobs, but also giving opportunities to young people as interns or as, volunteers in their workplace to get practical work experience. I know there were some on the job trainings that is subsidized, some of it with, with their salary for a couple of months, or other programs that has been happening. So if you can talk about that, that would be great.
Sure. So we really offer two different ways. One is the paid internship opportunity, where we would pay for the youth to work for an employer for a certain period of time. It could be a couple of months, and we cover that. And it's really for them to get a work experience. They're not necessarily hired by the company at the end of it. But it's just so they can have some type of work experience on their resume. And then the other is the on-the-job training wage subsidy that we usually work with an employer to hire the individual through our program. And if they actually hire the person, then for a period of time, again, maybe a few months, while they're learning on the job and getting acclimated to the company, we would pay a portion of their wages during that time. So it could be that we pay 50% of their wages during that period of time that they're with the employer. And then after that period is over, they continue on with the employer as a full-time employee. So those are just different incentives that we have that we use in order to incentivize employers to work with us to hire individuals through our programs. But also to the points that were being made before, we do a lot around soft skills training as well. I mean, the industry training is important, but what we're finding lately is the soft skills training is so much more important. And that's what we've tried to integrate that into all of our programs to help individuals really understand some of the important things that employers are looking for in terms of communication and how they show up to a job and thinking on their feet, critical thinking skills, things like that. So that's also so key to any services that we have provided and any success that we're seeing as well. But certainly those incentives that we offer to employers, that has been a big help in being able to work directly with them.
Great, thank you, SEEMA. I think there is another question from Elbana. Are there any projects that can be used as a model by private sector companies in closing the gap of digital skills and sector-specific skills when hiring graduates? I think it's a question. Yeah, it's on the, yeah. I know Yohannes has been involved in a couple of projects that are already ongoing. And maybe SEEMA and Kenneth, if you have any specific examples that we can leverage and learn from.
I mean, there's so many. I don't even know which one to pick. But you know, Ethiopia is a country that's going from government-led and starting to switch the private sector. The private sector is really picking up. We're starting to come up with some companies that are very able to compete globally. And what this means is that they hire a lot of younger generation, because you have to understand the lifeblood of any company are its employees. It's the younger generation. They're the future.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies are starting, a lot of CEOs are starting to realize that they need to invest in the younger generation. One of the hottest sector in Ethiopia right now is human capacity building. How do you create leaders? Younger generation, what do we need to do? Even the foreign companies from Google to name it, MasterCard and everything, they're trying to figure out what do we need to do with the younger generation. So we might not be able to find solution for every student, but for those who try and are able to find solutions, there's always something out there.
Yeah.
I would say as well here, a lot of employers do apprenticeship opportunities where someone can come and learn the skills. So if they need, you know, digital skills or sector specific skills in order to be successful in the job, they can hire them as an apprentice with the company where they're learning, they're getting paid during that time to learn those skills. And then they get a certification at the end of it. So that's also a tool that's been used.
Yeah. I think for me, the example that I gave of Saudi Arabia, which is a real live example, was basically, you know, in this case, it was a private entity which basically shared its intellect that Saudi had, because the question was, how do we create, you know, decent jobs for especially the youth in the kingdom. And the intention was to build a digital sector that would actually have the capacity to develop digital assets that could be exported to, you know, to the Arab countries around Saudi. And it's a real living example of what happens when there's commitment. And in this case, it was from the Saudi government. And in this case, you know, in partnership with the private sector. So I think that could be, you know, one of the examples. There's also, you know, the graduate development programs. I think, you know, if you look at the UK and countries like that, a lot of the companies actually do have graduate development programs. In the olden days, I think even here locally, the banks used to have a graduate development program. Again, that's where you could actually infuse, you know, the types of skills that you actually need. Because if it's actually a 1 or 2 year program, certainly you're fashioning that young person for the job and role that they'll actually take within the organization, especially if it's a program that's designed to basically progress the career of the young person within the work environment. Sometimes when I look at internship programs, I come away a little bit troubled, because I remember when somebody does an internship program, there's no guarantee of them actually getting a job. So sometimes for me, I kind of lean more towards maybe that sort of internship, almost like a graduate development program that will enable, you know, these young people to actually get jobs, so that we start to, you know, to solve the unemployment problem. But of course, the other example I've seen is University of Stellenbosch, where they are, or out of work youth rather, they get trained. And then what's interesting about the program is that it's got a very heavy entrepreneurship slant to it. And 80% of the graduates actually end up running their own businesses. So again, I think it's program design that is basically answering a question that an employer has, or that economies have. In my opinion, I think that is a more common sense way of really making sure that at the end of the day, we're investing in something that in the future will give us a return.
Thank you so much. I know this important conversation, we need the whole day to actually talk about it, and we're running out of time. But thank you so very much for the wonderful presentations. I will give Florence to just kind of close it. And I would like to say thank you so much. And we would continue the conversation. We're trying to engage other stakeholders also in this conversation, as it is very critical and close to our heart as well. And I really appreciate it for your time, expertise, and knowledge and sharing in this platform. Thank you. Florence?
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, as Sarah said, we are going to continue the conversation. Actually, this is just starting. As you probably know, in 2 weeks at the same time, we'll have another conversation from the perspective of employers. So some of the things that you already started talking about and we already started as having questions about. And then 2 weeks later, we'll have a discussion from the perspective of youth and some and innovative internship programs. We are going to send you a follow-up email with some references and a copy of the presentations and the recording. And we ask that you give us your input through a survey so that we can continually improve and continually learn and continue to offer programs that make sense to you. So thank you very much. Have a good, happy September.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great afternoon. Have a
Josh.
great evening.
SEEMA, Yohannes, and Kenneth. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much. Thank you very much.
You can stop recording it first.